The darkness of space stretched endlessly, cold and silent. Captain Raylan Voss sat in the cockpit of his small cargo ship, staring at the blinking light on his scanner. It was a distress signal, weak and fading, coming from somewhere near the orbit of a dying star. He hesitated for a moment, because distress signals in deep space could be traps. But something in the rhythm of that signal felt real, desperate. With a sigh, he changed course and guided his ship toward the source. As he approached, the drifting shape of an alien transport came into view. Its hull was scorched, parts of it torn open as if by weapons fire. The ship looked like it had been left to die a long time ago. Still, the faint beacon kept calling out into the void. Raylan aligned his docking clamps and crossed over through the airlock, his helmet light cutting through the darkness. The corridors were eerily silent, every step echoing in the cold metal halls. He passed rooms filled with floating debris clothes, broken tools, even toys. Something about the sight made his stomach tighten. It didn't look like a battlefield. It looked like people had simply left. But why would anyone abandon a ship out here? Near a collapsing star, deeper inside, he heard it, a faint sound, high-pitched and quick. At first he thought it was static, but then he realized it was breathing. He followed the sound until he reached the cargo bay. The door was slightly open, and when he pushed it wider, his breath caught in his throat. There, huddled in the shadows, were 7 small figures. Children, not human, but clearly alive, thin, pale, with wide eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They flinched when his helmet light fell on them. Pressing closer together, Raylan froze, unsure what to do. His translator struggled to process their language, only catching fragments, words like cold, hungry, and please. He checked the ship's logs on a nearby terminal. The last entry sent a chill down his spine. The adult crew had abandoned the ship when supplies ran low. They left the children behind, locked in the cargo bay. There was no sign of the crew anywhere, no escape pods, no life signs, nothing. Raylan felt anger rising in his chest. War or not, no one left. Children to die. He knelt down slowly, lowering his helmet so they could see his face through the visor. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. One of the older children stepped forward, trembling. Her voice was almost a whisper as she asked something his translator rendered into 3 simple words. "Are you human?" He nodded, and their eyes widened. Humans and their kind had fought in the past. But this moment wasn't about history. It was about survival. He reached out his gloved hand, waiting. Slowly, the girl placed her small, cold fingers in his minutes. Later, they were moving through the corridors together. The children clung to each other, their steps unsteady. Raylan carried the smallest one in his arms, feeling how light he was. When they reached his ship, he ushered them inside and sealed the airlock. Warm air filled the cabin, and the children huddled near the heater. Some still looked at him with suspicion, others with silent hope. He tried sending a wideband distress call to the nearest colony station. No one answered. He tried again on a different frequency, but still nothing. Finally, a cold automated voice replied, "Non-human biological. Cargo not accepted." Raylan stared at the console in disbelief. These were just kids, yet the galaxy had already decided they weren't worth saving. He turned back toward them, watching as the smallest child held onto the older girl's arm and closed his eyes. He thought about leaving them at the nearest neutral port. It would be safer for him, and his fuel reserves were running low. But every time he imagined walking away, he saw those frightened eyes staring back at him. Outside, the dying star's light flickered through the cockpit window. Its unstable core would collapse soon, sending lethal waves of radiation across the system. He didn't have much time to decide. If he left now, he could escape the blast easily. If he stayed to try and repair the alien transport or search for more survivors, he'd be risking his own life. Raylan closed his eyes for a moment, breathing slowly. The galaxy didn't care about these orphans. The law didn't care, but he cared. He wasn't going to be like the ones who abandoned them. He made his choice. locking in coordinates for a jump to safer space. The engines roared to life, and the alien children flinched at the sound. Raylan glanced at them in the reflection of the cockpit glass. They didn't know it yet, but from this moment forward, they weren't alone. As the ship pulled away from the wreck, the star behind them began to collapse. The light grew brighter, then darker, until the transport was swallowed by the void. Raylan gripped the controls tighter. This wasn't the end of their story, this was only the beginning. The journey to the nearest human colony took 3 days. 3 long days of quiet tension inside the small ship. The alien orphans stayed close to each other, rarely speaking except in whispers. They didn't trust Raylan yet, but they followed him because there was no one else. Raylan tried to make them comfortable, sharing his food rations, giving them blankets, even letting the smallest one sleep in the crew quarters while he stayed in the cockpit chair. Still, their eyes followed his every move, cautious and uncertain. One night, while the others slept, the oldest girl, her name was Sira, came to him. Her voice was quiet, almost shaking. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. Raylan paused, staring at the faint glow of the navigation screens. He didn't have an easy answer. Maybe it was guilt, maybe stubbornness, maybe something else entirely. Finally, he said, "Because someone should." When they reached the edge of the colony's airspace, Raylan sent his docking request. The response came back quickly, but the voice on the other end was cold and sharp. "You are carrying alien passengers," the official said. "State your authorization." "I found them on a derelict ship," Raylan replied. "They're just children. They need help." There was a pause. Then the voice returned, harsher. "Your request is denied, Captain Voss. We cannot allow former enemy species into the colony." Raylan felt his jaw tighten. "Former enemy?" "They're kids," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "They are not your responsibility," the voice answered flatly. "Leave them at the quarantine dock and you may enter. Otherwise, turn back." He cut the channel before his temper got the better of him. When he looked back, the children were awake, watching him with wide, silent eyes. They didn't understand the words, but they understood rejection. Raylan's gut twisted. He had seen this before. During the war, wounded soldiers left behind because they weren't worth the risk. And now here he was, being told to do the same thing. He didn't dock. Instead, he turned the ship away from the colony's lights, heading deeper into unpatrolled space. The fuel gauge blinked a warning. He was burning through resources faster than planned. But the thought of abandoning them at a cold metal quarantine dock made him sick. That night, strange things began to happen. Raylan woke to the sound of soft footsteps in the corridor. When he checked the cargo hold, he found tools scattered across the floor, as if someone had been searching for something. The ship's navigation console briefly flickered, showing coordinates he didn't recognize before returning to normal. He thought about locking the doors, but decided against it. He didn't want to scare them more than they already were. The next day, he confronted Sira. "Were you in the cockpit last night?" he asked. Her expression froze, and she looked at the others before answering. "They are looking for us," she whispered. Raylan frowned. "Who?" She hesitated, then spoke in a trembling voice. "The ones who chased our ship. The ones who made the others leave us behind." Her words stayed with him for the rest of the day. If someone was hunting these kids, it meant danger was following them right now. And the worst part was he had no idea who those hunters were or what they wanted. That night, as the stars drifted past the cockpit glass, Raylan realized something. He had left the colony thinking he was protecting the children from rejection, but now he might have dragged them and himself into something far more deadly. The following days were restless. Raylan kept glancing at the long-range scanner every few minutes, half expecting to see something chasing them. The alien children sensed his unease. They stayed close together, barely eating, barely sleeping. Sira spoke only when necessary, her eyes always drifting to the stars outside the window, as if expecting them to change. On the 4th day, the scanner beeped. Raylan's pulse quickened as a faint blip appeared at the far edge of the display. It was moving slowly at first, almost drifting, but every time he checked, it seemed a little closer. He told himself it could be a random freighter, maybe another patrol ship. But deep down he knew that night, while the children slept, Raylan reviewed the recordings from the alien transport. In one shaky video, an alien crew member whispered frantically into the camera, his voice urgent. "They will find us. They always find us, there is no escape." The feed ended abruptly with the sound of pounding on a metal door. Raylan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. If this was the same they Sierra spoke about, then their time was running out. He needed answers. The next morning, Raylan sat with Sierra in the mess hall. He slid a ration pack toward her, but she didn't touch it. Instead, she spoke in a low voice. "They are called the Black Sun," she said, the translator struggling with the words. "They destroy worlds, erase entire bloodlines. If they know you exist, you die." Raylan frowned. "Why? Why chase children?" Sierra's small hands clenched. "We are the last of our people," she said. "Our parents hid us. But the hunters found the ship. We escaped once. But they will come again." Before Raylan could reply, the ship's lights flickered. The console beeped an urgent warning. The same faint blip was now 3 times closer. No ordinary freighter moved that fast. They were being hunted. He rushed to the cockpit, checking the scanner again. This time, the blip pulsed red. An identification code flashed across the display, but it wasn't any code from the Human Alliance database. Instead, it was a symbol of burning black sun, exactly as Sierra had described. The children woke to the sound of the ship's engines roaring to life. Raylan pushed the throttle forward, steering them toward uncharted space. Asteroid fields, unstable wormholes, regions no sane pilot would enter, anything to shake their pursuer. The children clung to the seats, wide-eyed. Sierra's voice trembled as she whispered to herself. "They have found us." Raylan kept his eyes locked on the scanner. The enemy ship wasn't firing. Not yet. It was just following, as if letting them know escape was impossible. A cold knot formed in his stomach. This wasn't a simple chase. This was a game. And the hunters were in no hurry, because they believed their prey had nowhere to run. Asterisk, the stars outside streaked into lines as Raylan's ship pushed its engines to the limit. The hum of the reactor deepened, a low growl that filled every corner of the vessel. Behind them, the blip on the scanner stayed locked in position, matching their speed perfectly. No matter how fast he went, the hunter didn't fall back. Sierra stood in the doorway to the cockpit, her face pale. "They are playing with us," she said quietly. Raylan didn't answer, but he knew she was right. Whoever was behind that burning black sun symbol wasn't in a rush. They wanted him to panic, to make a mistake. He took them toward the Maw cluster, a dense field of ancient asteroids that had swallowed countless ships. The colony charts marked it in red with a single warning, "Do not enter." But to Raylan, it was a chance. "If we can hide in there, maybe we can lose them," he muttered, mostly to himself. As they entered the cluster, massive chunks of rock drifted slowly in the darkness. Some were the size of cities, others just shards of shattered stone. Raylan weaved through the maze, keeping the ship close to the shadows. For a few minutes, the scanner went clear, no sign of pursuit. He allowed himself a small breath of relief. Then the enemy appeared, sliding between the asteroids with eerie precision. Its hull was black, almost invisible against space, except for the blazing sun emblem painted across its front. It was larger than Raylan expected, its shape predatory, built for speed and strength. The children gasped when they saw it through the viewport. The smallest one began to cry, and Sierra pulled him close, whispering in their language. Raylan knew he couldn't outrun it in open space. The only option was to force it into danger. He steered toward a spinning asteroid with a deep fissure running through it. The gap was barely wide enough for his ship to slip inside. The hull scraped the rock as they entered, sparks flashing outside. The hunter followed. its black shape slicing into the fissure inside. The asteroid's tunnels twisted like a maze. Raylan used every bit of piloting skill he had, banking sharply, diving through tight turns. Chunks of stone broke loose, spinning dangerously close to their hull. Behind them, the enemy's sleek form twisted through the same path, never slowing, never losing ground. "They won't stop," Sira said, her voice tight with fear. Raylan's hands gripped the controls so hard his knuckles went white. "Then we make them," he said. He spotted a narrow tunnel ahead, one that ended in a sudden drop into open space. If he timed it right, the hunter would follow too closely straight into an asteroid drift. The ship shot out of the tunnel. The sudden light blinding after the darkness, Raylan swerved hard to the right, skimming the edge of a massive rotating boulder. The hunter came out a heartbeat later, just as two asteroids collided. The shockwaves slammed against Raylan's ship, sending alarms blaring, but when he glanced back, the hunter was gone from the scanner. Silence filled the cockpit, broken only by the sound of the children's breathing. Sira stepped forward, looking at the empty scanner. "They will come back," she said, not as a warning, but as a certainty. Raylan nodded slowly. He knew this wasn't over. If anything, the game had just begun. The hunter had vanished from the scanner, but Raylan didn't believe for a second that they were truly gone. Predators didn't give up their prey. They simply waited for the right moment. He needed a place to hide, somewhere the black sun wouldn't dare follow. The answer came from an old smuggler's chart buried deep in his ship's database. A rogue planet drifting between stars, far from any trade route or colony. It had no sunlight, no heat, and no reason for anyone to live there. Its name was lost in translation, but smugglers called it the World of Shadows. The journey took 2 days, the cold and silence outside pressing against the ship like a weight. The children spoke more now, their voices soft but less fearful. Raylan learned their names: Sira, Yalan, Corinne, and the others. He discovered they had different roles on their lost ship. Some were students, some were too young to remember their home. Yet all of them carried the same look in their eyes, the look of someone who had seen too much loss. When the planet finally appeared, it was little more than a black sphere against black space. If not for the faint pull of its gravity on his instruments, Raylan might have missed it entirely. He guided the ship down through its thin, icy atmosphere. The surface was a wasteland of frozen mountains and deep, lightless valleys. Only the faint glow of his ship's landing lights cut through the darkness. They found shelter inside the hollow of a massive ice canyon. The walls rose high above them, blocking any view from orbit. It was cold, but the ship's heaters kept the interior livable. Raylan rationed the remaining food carefully, knowing resupply would be difficult. The children explored cautiously, staying close to the ship, their glowing eyes visible in the dark. That night, as Raylan checked the perimeter sensors, Sira approached, him holding something in her hands. It was a crystal pendant, small and faintly warm despite the freezing air. "This belonged to my mother," she said, her voice steady. "It is the key to our people's survival." Raylan frowned, turning it over in his palm. The crystal pulsed faintly, as if alive. "What does it do?" he asked. Sira shook her head. "I don't know. But the black sun wants it." Her words sent a chill down his spine. He realized then that this wasn't just about the children. It was about whatever secret their species had been trying to protect. And now, by taking them in, that secret had become his burden too. The days on the rogue planet were long and quiet. Raylan repaired minor damage to his ship while the children played in the snow-like dust outside. Sometimes their laughter would echo against the canyon walls, strange and beautiful in the darkness. For the first time since finding them, Raylan saw them smile. But the peace didn't last. One evening, the perimeter alarm sounded. Raylan ran to the cockpit, his heart pounding. The scanner showed a faint signature in orbit above the planet. It wasn't broadcasting any signal, but he didn't need one to know who it was. The black sun had found them. Asterisk, the faint signal in orbit didn't move for hours. It was like a shadow hanging over the planet. Silent and patient, Raylan knew the hunters were scanning the surface, searching for heat or movement. The ice canyon had hidden them so far, but it was only a matter of time before they found a way down. He gathered the children inside the ship's galley. The dim lights reflected in their wide eyes. "They've found us," he said, his voice calm but firm. Some of the younger ones whimpered, but Sierra met his gaze steadily. "What will you do?" she asked. Raylan didn't sugarcoat it. "We fight, we use the canyon to our advantage, and we make sure they never touch you." With the children's help, he began preparing traps. They salvaged pieces from the wrecked alien transport Raylan had found earlier. Strange devices that emitted bursts of electromagnetic energy. Sharp shards of frozen rock were set in unstable positions, ready to fall when triggered. Raylan rigged his ship's rear cannons to be remotely fired. It was a patchwork defense, but it was all they had. Hours later, the sky above the canyon lit up. A sleek black dropship descended, its engines cutting through the silence. The burning black sun symbol glowed faintly on its side. Raylan felt his muscles tighten. The hunters had arrived. They moved like shadows, armored figures with glowing visors. Raylan waited until they were deep inside the canyon before triggering the first trap. A section of ice wall shattered, sending a cascade of jagged shards crashing down. 2 of the hunters were buried instantly. The rest scattered, their weapons glowing in the dark. Raylan opened fire from the ridge, forcing them into the narrowest paths. Sierra and the older children activated the alien devices, sending waves of static that disrupted the hunters' comms. It wasn't enough to stop them completely, but it slowed their advance. One of the hunters spotted Raylan and fired. Heat seared past his shoulder. Melting a patch of ice, he dove behind cover, returning fire in short, precise bursts. The battle dragged on, the air thick with frost and the smell of scorched metal. Raylan fought with everything he had, but the hunters kept coming. Then, one of them broke through. Grabbing Sierra by the arm, she screamed, struggling to break free. Raylan didn't think. Ran, sliding down the ice, tackling the armored figure. They hit the ground hard, and the crystal pendant slipped from Sierra's neck. Landing between them, the hunter reached for it, but Raylan's hand closed over the crystal first. A sudden pulse of light burst from it, blinding them both. The hunters staggered back, clutching their visor, and Raylan fired point blank. The armored figure collapsed, unmoving, with the leader down. The remaining hunters retreated toward their dropship. Raylan didn't chase them. He knew this was only a temporary victory. But for now, they were alive, and the black sun had been forced to leave empty-handed. Back inside the ship, Sierra sat beside him, her voice soft. "You could have left us," she said. Raylan looked at the crystal in his hand, then at her. "I told you," he replied. "I'm not like the ones who abandoned you." Outside, the sky cleared, and the rogue planet's endless darkness returned. But in the warmth of the ship, the children slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Raylan stayed awake, watching the scanners. The hunters would be back, and when they came, he'd be ready. The battle in the canyon was over, but its echo still lingered in Raylan's mind. He stood in the cockpit, staring at the stars above the rogue planet. Each one felt like a reminder out there. The galaxy was wide, dangerous, and full of people who would rather look away than help. The children were quiet that morning, moving slower, their faces showing the weight of what they had been through. Sierra sat near the heater, the crystal pendant once again hanging from her neck. She was polishing it with careful hands, as if she now understood it was more than just a keepsake. Raylan joined her, lowering himself onto the floor beside her. "We can't stay here forever," he said. Her gaze met his, steady and determined. "Where will we go?" He thought for a long moment, then entered new coordinates into the nav system. A place he had heard about in Whisper's Haven's Reach. It was a hidden colony, not on any official map, known for giving shelter to those who had nowhere else to turn. If they could make it there, the children might finally be safe. The journey took days, and for the first time since they met, the children began to laugh again. They told Raylan fragments of stories from their homeworld. They showed him games they played using small stones and folded bits of fabric. Even the quietest child, Yalan, smiled when Raylan pretended to lose to him. When the stars ahead shifted and the faint shimmer of a hidden shield came into view, Raylan felt a knot in his chest loosen. Haven's Reach appeared. A cluster of ships welded together into a massive station, surrounded by fields of drifting ice. The docking request was met with a voice warmer than any Raylan had heard in months. "Bring them in, Captain. They'll be safe here." As they stepped off the ship, the children looked around in awe. The colony was alive with lights, markets, and the smell of cooking food. People of dozens of species walked together without fear. For the first time, the orphans didn't look over their shoulders. Sierra turned to Raylan, her voice barely above a whisper. "You could leave now. Start your life again," she said. Raylan looked at her, then at the others, each one watching him with quiet hope. He shook his head, a faint smile touching his lips. "My life is here with you," he replied. "I'm your guardian now." The leader of Haven's Reach, a tall alien with silver eyes, approached. "We can hide them," they said. "But you should know the Black Sun doesn't forget." Raylan's expression hardened. "Neither do I," he answered, as the children ran ahead into the colony's crowded streets, their laughter mixing with the hum of life around them. Raylan followed. The stars beyond the shield still burned with danger, but here, for now, they had found something worth protecting. And if the Black Sun ever came again, they would learn the same truth Raylan had promised the day he found the orphans. He would never abandon them.